Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Hello, folks.
Alan Seiler,
That did not sound like a Keith intro.
Not my typical greeting. I froze.
Mine is. We haven't heard from the green one.
and Veronica Dashnell.
I love it.
Hi. That is my typical one.
It is.
All right, do we have from This Week in Trek this week, Keith?
Just a couple, because it wasn't a lot. It's like nothing happened in the entire month of October throughout human history, which is so funny when you, when you do these. There is one very important that I think is extremely significant, and actually kind of, sort of, peripherally even has to do with caves. That is on the 15th of October, 1992. I'm really reaching here. The final script was delivered for Chain of Command.
I knew that's what you were going to be saying. I knew it was going to be about Chain of Command.
Yes. Literally one of the best episodes, I say, in Star Trek history. And of course, anybody who doesn't know what that is, just think, what is it? There are 4 lights?
Right.
There are 5.
Yes. And some of the best acting of all of Star Trek. And guess what? There was a cave that they had to run around in, and a cave they had to scale and so forth. So I can't wait to talk about caves tonight, but that was so funny to me. Another one, this is a personal one. On the 16th of October, 1989 was the debut of one of my favorite episodes because it's I think it's a really dramatically good episode and deals with the Prime Directive, and that is the TNG episode, Who Watches the Watchers?
Oh,
I love that episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
It's not one of the ones that you ever think of when you're like, name your top. I mean, even if you're doing like 75 TNGs, that's not one of the first ones you'd think of, but I really like it.
Yeah. I love that episode too. How about you, Charles?
Oh, yeah, that's a great episode.
Yeah, it's also in the season where that's 3rd season, right? It's also when Star Trek made a noticeable change in quality from season 2 to season 3. I mean, it hit on all cylinders in that season. And so but there's a lot of good in season 2, but when you really start talking about the episodes that you love in TNG, they start hitting in season 3. I even remember the music from the episode, which is something I don't say a lot about Trek outside the original series. It's just a really great Prime Directive episode. I know some people don't like the fact that, I've read some things where people say the fact that the belief in a god turned everybody crazy, violent, and basically got to burn people at the stake. But hey, it is what it is.
And that's kind of related to caves too.
Really? How's that?
Because they were in the cave
thing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Keith, you're just hitting the theme left and right and don't even realize it. That's how good you are.
It was a cave with like the 7-foot wall and water and places and rocks to sit on.
Yeah.
You're right. Another one. This is all personal this week. The 18th of October, 1968, Charles, one of your favorite OS episodes debuted, which you've said many times is beautiful in appearance as well as subject matter.
Is it Metamorphosis?
No, it's actually Is There in Truth No Beauty? Because I just realized I wrote the wrong thing.
Jeez.
Is There in Truth No Beauty is the episode.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
There you go. But the real question is there in truth no caves?
Oh.
Let's see. There's not a cave in that
I don't think there's a
episode.
cave
That's
in
true.
that one.
No.
That is true.
You shouldn't have mentioned that one, Keith. You're on a roll.
Okay, now I got a theme. Okay, last two. On 19th of October, 1987, Veronica, the introduction of the Ferengi aired.
Yay!
As the big bads who were going to go on to become the equivalent of the Klingons and the Romulans.
That panned out really well.
Right.
Yes.
That was kind of like an open cave. It had stalactites all over the place.
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
true. The last outpost where the Ferengi
Reaching.
were first introduced with fur and laser whips.
Yeah. I like those laser whips.
I do too,
Yes.
man. Those are cool.
Yes, and then the last one, the 20th of October, this is all series and episode premieres, the 20th of October, 1966. Wow. Another one of my absolute favorites from the original series, What Are Little Girls Made Of? Which has modern Star Trek tie-ins because Dr. Roger Corby, who we now know from Strange New Worlds is going to be somewhat integral in Christine's future, was featured. It brought in some stuff from Robert Bloch, who was one of the writers of The Twilight Zone, this whole concept of the old ones, an ancient spacefaring race. And it showed that to make an android, you just put somebody on the table and spun them around several times. Then an android popped out.
That was a pretty cool effect, though.
It was. And it took place in a series of caves.
It did.
Exactly.
That one.
Exactly. You have one outlier tonight, but all the other ones line up with our theme beautifully.
Right.
Wild.
Keeping up with the 1/3.
Yeah, that's this week in Trek and Cave history.
Trek and cave history. And Matt Sweatman is wondering if our subject tonight is how caves are represented in each Trek series. Well, something like that.
Something like that. No, we'll be talking about the Lord X episode Caves in a little while. But first, we thought we'd talk about some of the interesting alien environments that we've seen in Star Trek, some of which are caves and some of which aren't. And how effectively they were pulled off and how effectively they were used narratively. Because, I mean, for a long time, Star Trek obviously has been, having to rely on the budget that they had and the resources they had to try to pull off alien worlds every week. Not every week, some weeks.
many weeks.
Right. But, I mean, just to jump off of what Matt said, I mean, there are quite a few episodes set in caves.
Yeah. Let's talk about the best one ever.
Okay.
I'm being facetious.
Oh.
Heart of Stone.
Oh, I like Heart of Stone.
I do too.
Isn't that the one with Odo and the Changeling and it's coming up? That was the one I was going to talk about. I like that one.
But that's the one where Kira, that whole lovey-dovey nonsense.
We all think alike because literally just before we went to air, it just came to mind. I was like, I don't want to call Alan out, but I'm like, is that the episode Alan didn't like? That's great.
That is correct.
I like all the rest of the episode, just not the cave nonsense.
What were you going to say about it, Veronica?
Well, I was going to say that the way that Odo thought the cave was going of growing up her leg and then covering her body, that was a pretty cool concept, and I really enjoyed that. And it looked like they harkened back to that a little bit in this Lower Decks episode we're going to talk about later. Even though it was actually a changeling just making it look like that's what happened, but the changeling had to get the idea from somewhere, so therefore that is clearly a thing that happens on some planet somewhere that they have seen.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was effectively using the cave because they're very isolated.
Yes.
And it's very much, that part of the episode is very much a two-hander with Nana Visitor and Renee Aubergenois. But I mean, they use it really well. I mean, that's the episode where like Odo essentially breaks down, not necessarily in tears, but just about in tears, which is very unusual for Odo.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I think it was used really well, the setting, just pairing those two up and letting the sort of the drama and suspense build between them.
Yeah.
It's actually one. I listened to some interviews recently with Nana Visitor, and she actually called that out as one of the episodes that she enjoyed because she said she was on DS9 for 7 years, and she was devastated when the show ended because she said she didn't know if before or since she would ever find a show like that to give her that type of acting ability. Right. And what she did like about that episode and that show was the dramatic arc that she got to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she really loved that one.
Well, what are some of the other environments that you guys were thinking of and that were used effectively or ineffectively on Star Trek?
My favorite thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was just gonna say my favorite thing about Star Trek, and when we're talking about these kind of things, is that it's always an entire planet. Like something is a desert planet or an ocean planet. There's never any like variance of environments on a particular any planet.
Right.
It's always one thing.
Yes.
They lampooned that in an episode of Stargate SG-1 where they thought they were on an ice planet because they climbed out of the cave and there was like ice everywhere, and turns out they were in Antarctica.
I love it.
What were you going to say, Keith?
That's really great. One of them it's ridiculously obvious, but you can't avoid it. One of them where the environment of the entire planet has shaped the people is Vulcan itself. Now, I don't know how canon this is, but I've read the book. I think it's Spock's World. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking correctly, that book starts out with Vulcan prehistory. And it starts with early Vulcan hominids, basically akin to us maybe 1 million years ago, where they were kind of what we would call a missing link. And what the book could contest at that time is that Vulcan was actually a very green and fertile world full of water and trees and so forth, but there was a solar flare on the Vulcan sun. And that solar flare is what flashed the planet, burned off most of the water, and turned it into a desert planet. And whether that's canon or not, we look at the Vulcans, they're an incredibly tough race. It also blew away a lot of their protective atmosphere and their oxygen. And so now we look at Vulcan, it's a planet with thin air, low oxygen, very high temperature, and it's a desert planet. And what I've always found very amazing about Vulcan, which we saw in the animated episode yesteryear, is sometimes Vulcans I think even cooler than people realize, because as sophisticated and intelligent and so forth as they are, they still send their 7-year-old children out into the forge to survive. I love that. What a crazy culture. It's like what we would call warrior monks in our fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, on some of the newer Star Treks, we've actually seen a little more variety on the Vulcan environments. And I know that there was an episode of Voyager that referenced this city. I think it was like Ra'al or something that's on the sea. And then we got a scene set in that episode that's like there's an ocean and or a body of water, and which is an unusual thing to see for portrayals of Vulcan. Oftentimes, it was just a red background with some rocks or or an exterior.
Yes. And one of the episodes, of course, where Vulcan itself really came into play, obviously, was the first trip to Vulcan, which was Amok Time, where Kirk not only found himself in the horrible position of fighting his half-Vulcan first officer, but as McCoy said, if the heat doesn't kill you, the thin air will. And the whole point of that was, I still don't know I know why he took that, but the whole thing was Kirk was basically about to die of either heat stroke or suffocation or getting his head cut off, whichever.
Right.
And so I think that's a good example where the nature of the planet plays greatly into these people, because they are still one of the most physically impressive people in Star Trek, the Vulcans.
Sure, yeah.
Matt Sweatman says that every science fiction property has ice planets or desert planets or jungle planets. That is absolutely true, because the first thing that came to mind was Arrakis.
True.
Oh, good one.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a desert planet to me seems a little more plausible than like a jungle planet does.
Yeah.
Because you're just a little bit too far from the sun to get a lot of foliage, and we've all seen pictures of Mars, and Mars is essentially that.
Yeah.
Not as hot though. But I mean, that's one thing that we saw on Star Trek going all the way back. Because, they had the cyclorama set. They put a different color gel on the sky and then changed the rocks around. And then you have different environment planets. You want a jungle planet, you put some bushes around and make the sky green.
Yes.
Right.
You say that, Charles. I still miss those planets where, like you said, the sky was purple and all these other colors. Wow, it was just so cool.
Yeah. They're doing more of that now. You have sort of the modern version of that, I guess, is their AR wall set. You get a similar sort of feel off the AR wall set, where you'll have. It just makes it makes it feel a little more like a stage, which I'm not saying in a negative way, but it feels a little more like being on the cyclorama, just with more interactive backgrounds in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I think most all of there's not that many times that Star Trek in any of its iterations has done a lot of location work. A lot of these exterior shots that we're talking about have all been done in studio. And I think the AR wall is something that you're in studio, but it makes it feel like it's not.
Right.
And it is absolutely an extension of that, well, quote unquote, technology from all the way back to the original series, where it is exactly what you're saying. It's a big panoramic stage set that they would redress in different ways. And now it's just done digitally and live, like as the action happens, and the backgrounds can move and can change as the story changes. And it's a fascinating technology.
Yeah. And they can, like with green screen, they did a lot of stuff on green screen or blue screen before that.
Right.
But you have to light everything
just right.
Yeah, just right.
Yes.
Whereas,
really just right.
But now with the AR wall set, they don't have to do that, because you get a lot of interactive lighting from the environment. So, you have the different colors cast on which I think it just gives it a different feel.
Yeah.
And one of the things to say about what the different planetary atmosphere colors, as you were mentioning, Charles, I've read a lot of people say how unrealistic those were. but that's actually not true, because if you think about it, it's a very weird thing on our planet. We don't think about it, but we always think our sky is blue, and it is sometimes, but our sky is red. It's red, it's orange, and it's pink. And it's from the same sun and the same sunlight, and it all has to do with what's filtering out the light as the light travels through it. So you can absolutely have a completely breathable planet for humans with a greenish sky or purplish sky if it had a certain amount of dust, or if it had, say, more argon in the atmosphere than nitrogen. So those were actually more realistic than I think we think. What wasn't realistic, but what I also missed, is you remember all that little humming background in so many planets in the original series? There was always
The wind chimes.
Yes, I love that. It made no sense, but it was so cool. People used to call it the music of the spheres.
Sure, yeah.
How do you know if it's an alien planet if you don't hear the wind chimes?
This is true.
I was very active on Star Trek message boards when Star Trek 2009 came out, and they filmed all the Vulcan stuff as exteriors, and Vulcan had a blue sky, and that was a very controversial thing.
I bet.
Yes.
So I was thinking about when you were talking about Vulcans and in relation to caves, I was like, hey, Star Trek 2009, they were in a cave on Vulcan, and that's all we got of the. That's almost all we got of Vulcan.
2009, we got all kind of Vulcan. They're like outside on Vulcan and in cities and stuff.
What?
Yeah.
Am I not thinking about the one where Spock's mom just goes poof when they run out of the cave?
Well, they were in the cave for that part, but they did a skydive, and they were fighting on the drill platform, and there was a city.
Oh, I forgot that was on Vulcan.
Yeah.
Which Star Trek 2009 were you watching, Veronica?
I thought that was closer to the beginning.
She has the cave edition on DVD.
Oh shit! Sorry. Okay, couple of comments. Wayne, hello. Wayne says about Alan's comment on Arrakis. I was thinking the same thing. Dune, Arrakis, desert planet. And then Matt says, I love the location episodes of original series, such as Arena, Shore Leave, This Side of Paradise, even the location scenes in Operation Annihilate.
I love the location scenes in that. They're awesome.
Oh, yeah. Those are really good.
Yeah, and I think the location work on the original series looks particularly beautiful because the way that show was shot, the types of lenses, and the fact that they're shooting on 35mm film, rather than on video. Or they would film a lot of next gen and DS9 stuff on film, but then edit it on video. And like the DS9 stuff, we still haven't seen a film edit of a lot of that stuff.
No,
but the original series just looks fantastic. There's that famous scene where Kirk's running through the woods, and it's a moving camera, and it just looks great, and you get that natural lighting.
Yes, Shore Leave, is that it?
No, yes, it is Shore Leave.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Another planet I thought of where the planet itself, gosh, I guess I need to stay in the original series for this. Some of it was the God computer, but some of it was the planet itself, and that was the planet in the apple. Because you remember Vol, the God computer, would zap the security guards with lightning bolts and so forth.
Yeah.
But it was also a weird planet because it had flowers that shot poisonous darts out of them. It had those crazy rocks where you split one and it didn't do anything, but if you threw it, it like blew up. So,
but you know what else it had?
What's that?
A big cave.
Yep.
Oh yes, it did.
And according to Matt Sweatman, the foe is literally a cave.
Yeah, he mentioned Vol in the comments a little while ago.
Interesting.
And that's a great. I mean, that's a very stage bound planet, but they use it very well. Yeah. And I mean, that intro sequence, which is basically, I mean, it's kind of Star Trek cliched at this point, where they beam bound like, wow, it's like the Garden of Eden. What a wonderful place. And then it just starts murdering red shirts left and right. They're blowing up and struck by lightning, shot by darts. Like,
yes. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading something online, another Star Trek group. And two people got into an argument about which episode of the original series had the biggest red shirt deaths. And they were basically arguing between the apple and Obsession. And but both of them had a high body count. But one of the things I do like about the apple, basically what you were saying, Charles, about they beam down like, oh, this is paradise. I love the really brief scene where Kirk is beating himself up because one of the security guards who dies, Kirk said his father helped him get into the academy.
Yeah,
and the whole thing exactly. And Kirk is sitting there going, basically, I let myself be lulled into a sense of security because it looked so beautiful. I should have been more on my guard.
Yeah, that Garevik was an Obsession though. That was on the planet where the Dicronium cloud creature was after them.
Well, who was but there was another guy in the Apple that was killed. Kirk said his father got him to the academy.
Oh, I don't remember then.
And the reason I know is because it's when Spock told Kirk not to recriminate himself, and then right after that, Spock says we're being watched.
Okay.
But I got to look that one up.
Okay.
So that was a couple of my picks. What do you guys have for other planetary environments?
Well, one that we've seen a lot, a location that we've seen a lot, which is a little bit different from the studio-bound locations or the studio-bound environments, is Vasquez Rocks, which has been several planets.
Yeah,
I didn't even think of that. Good one. Yes,
that's awesome.
Real life alien planet.
Yeah, I mean it's a great location, and it's very distinctive, and it's to the point now where like you get like bonus points for reusing the same location instead of them saying like, oh, it's just the same rocks over again. You're like, hey, Vasquez Rocks.
Right.
Yes, and that one works because the entire planetoid, for some strange reason, has in Arena has basically. That's the Metron said, tools for you to destroy each other. So it had basically all the chemicals to create gunpowder and diamonds and all this kind of weird stuff lying around. So yeah, it was a very odd planet.
Now the Metrons may have had a hand in that.
Yeah.
Making sure the right ingredients were within arm's reach if you were looking for them.
Yeah.
It also had what I used to notice too, which I also found funny when you see planetary environments. You ever notice how planets like that, there's always a boulder strategically placed just the right size that a human can roll to kill somebody below them?
Have you ever tried to push a rock that size?
I know, right?
That doesn't move.
Yes.
That thing does not move. I don't care how round the bottom of it is. It's not moving.
Of course, it's easier when it's made out of.
It's there for a reason. The wind has not blown it over for a reason.
Yeah.
Right.
It's easier when it's made out of styrofoam.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So we've talked about deserts and we talked about jungles and we've talked about Vasquez Rocks. Let's. I want to talk about something different, something a little colder. I want to go to the ice worlds. So let's talk about the Andorians and their home planet,
and
where
those have caves.
And they have caves. Exactly.
They live in the cave.
That's where the Enars live. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I'm always been, ever since their first appearance in the original series, I have always loved and been fascinated by the Andorians. And one of the things that I really loved in Enterprise was having a story that goes to their home planet.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, not much. You see a little bit of more of how the Enar live than the Andorians themselves. But I loved being able to see that. So you talk about a resilient race. These are people that come up in bitter cold. And, to the point where I don't know how they exist on a starship. They have got to be completely, horribly uncomfortable, to the point where, Bruce Horak's character, whatever his name was going to jump out of the ship because it would, and that's we'll have to get into that another time where he should still be alive.
Don't get me on Hemmer, man.
Don't get me on him. Exactly.
We're gonna lose this episode.
Right. But I'll tell you, I love the Andorians and I want to see more of their home. And, like in DS9, we saw a good bit more of Ferenginar. Yeah. And we kind of get a sense, and that's another one, a rainy planet. And that's something that I would like to get more of from an Andorian character, something that really explores where they come from and what makes them the way they are.
Right.
And there's also Rora Penthe.
True.
Talk about cold.
And, Alan, I find it a very interesting contrast that in Enterprise, the Vulcans and the Andorians have been at war.
Yeah.
They're both two very fierce races of people, even though the Vulcans have logic. And you have one comes from a hot desert planet and one comes from a almost unlivable ice planet. But they are both fierce. Really, I call Vulcans warrior people, even though they got the logic going on.
Yeah. And I wish they had kind of made a little more of that.
Yeah.
Because we had that continuing story of the relationship between Vulcan and Andoria, and I wish that had been like played up a little bit more, because like the Enterprise crew goes to, the first time we see these people is in that temple, and I can't remember the name of it, but so we have both
Yeah.
Vulcans and Andorians on this planet, on this whatever it was, an asteroid or whatever, and they're both outside of their normal comfort zone, to be literal about it. And I would like to have seen, going into a colder climate have an effect on Vulcans, and going into warmer climates have an effect on Andorians. I would like to see more of that kind of thing, rather than them just being humans in a human environment wearing blue makeup and whatever.
Yeah, that would be funny to have like them having to meet on Earth, and like the Andorians are bundled up, and the
Right.
Vulcans are having to like, wear cooling things. They're meeting in like a temperate, a moderate climate, but it's still kind of extreme for both of them. That'd be, whether those aliens or not, that'd be a cool concept for an episode.
That's
Yeah,
true, because you could have a warm section for Vulcans and Klingons and Cardassians. You could have a cold section for the Andorians and the Breen.
It'd be like Mr. Freeze on the old Batman show.
Yes.
where you like click a dial and it turns blue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just that part of the room.
Yes.
And you're right, Veronica. I said that backwards.
Yes.
We knew what you meant, sweetie.
One thing I want to say real quick, as Alan was talking about the cold, I've been watching a lot of Viking history stuff, and one of the things that caused the Viking depredations of Europe for hundreds of years was it was pretty damn hard for the Vikings, the Danes, and so forth to live. It was hard to farm the land, and at least once or twice in human history since like 2,000 years BC, there's been a couple of mini ice ages. And historians and archaeologists and anthropologists have traced things like mass starvations and also mass wars of conquest during these mini ice ages, where it's basically just too damn cold to grow food, and people turned to conquering. So that would probably also explain why the Andorians became kind of a warrior race as well, because it's hard to live on that planet.
Well, and thinking about that, is there a similar thing that happens in Andorian history? Did they go through, we have ice ages. Did they go through heat ages?
This is
where
true. Yeah.
where their planet becomes unlivable for them because the climate changes so drastically. Ooh, that's fascinating. I'm ready.
Yes. Charles is like, you guys are really focused on the Enterprise here. But
no. Well, it's just that's where we saw
one of the Enterprise
Andorians.
episodes I remember.
Yeah, but two quick things also about the Andorians. There's the episode where Archer has to fight Shran, and the weapon is some weird ice cutting tool, which is like if their weapon. And there's also the episode where they go to Andoria. There are these really funky worms that literally burn through anything. Remember, they kept dropping out of the cave roofs.
Yes.
So it was some kind of weird worm that if it fell on you, it would burn your skin, because they generate all this super heat and they live in the ice, which is just really wild.
Yeah. That's I'd forgotten about that. That's a good point, Keith. Matt has a couple of things to say. One is that he loved the ice environment in all our yesterdays,
which took place in.
What, a cave?
When they fell Zarabeth.
And he says, I think environmental and temperature adapting would be very important to the various races to train for in Starfleet. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
We may see that in Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
That would be a good
thing
to pick up on.
Right.
In the series.
Especially with them having been completely separated from each other and just stuck on their one planet. It's not like they're used to having gone back and forth.
Yeah. Because for some species, it could be deadly to even leave their environment. Some of them it's uncomfortable. Some of them it could truly be deadly, even to come to Earth.
Well, and that, we saw in Discovery, we saw that episode where Tilly is leading a mission of basically cadets, who are straight out of the academy, and it's a mix of different races. And what would be interesting to see is that kind of mission, that kind of team put together and visiting different environments, and the one who is native to that environment helping the others to understand how to survive it, what to do when you're in this situation. This is how you adapt. And then another one who is from a, very, very humid jungle planet helps the guy from the cold planet say, this is what you need to do here. And I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And realistically, although it was only touched on once and badly in DS9, realistically, you would have beings from different gravity planets. That would be a huge problem.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I thought was great on Orville. They didn't deal with it as much as they should have, but the planet where the security lady comes from has a hugely heavy gravity, and you can see how it affects humans when they walk out of the shuttle or whatever and onto the planet. And
Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. I think they should have done more because
Mhm.
she exists way too easily on the Orville,
Right.
in our gravity,
Right. Right.
because
Well,
it
we're
never goes both ways.
Right. Well, she had super strength in our
I
gravity.
know.
But,
So
we're almost
Superman.
at time. Do we want to grab any more comments before we?
There was one more. Now there's two. Wayne says, heck, Enterprise was the only show where Andorians truly got any exposure.
Amen, Wayne. And they did.
And
it
here,
well, too.
here's
I
a
was
good
wondering
one.
if exposure was a cold joke. But...
That's what I was wondering too.
But I'm Bob.
And Elaine says, where the Zindi, the only ones that had a race that live in the water. That would be interesting to see, a true water planet. I totally agree with you.
Other than the animated series
Right.
episode you just watched.
Right.
Yep. I was just thinking of that.
Yep.
Yeah, they lived in the water. And the Voyager had an entire episode
Mhm.
where there was a planet that was literally one giant globe of water floating.
Yeah, it was
in
basically
space.
like a space ocean.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a
Yeah.
cool episode.
Yeah. Hey, one of the real quick thing I want to say about planets of Star Trek, and boy, did I not realize this, that we could go 2 hours on this.
Oh,
One of the
easily.
things that's, yeah, one of the things that's so fascinating is anybody who's watched Star Trek Special Edition series noticed they would say, we are approaching a Class M planet.
Mhm.
Class M being Earth-like planet, primarily oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere. And there were other planetary types. One of them that was pretty interesting was there was a demon type planet in Voyager. I think that was type Y. There's all these different types of planet. What's interesting is people throughout the years literally thought this was something that had come from NASA or something like that. They literally thought it was made up for Star Trek. It
Yeah.
sounded so realistic. People thought it was a real scientific scale for
Mhm.
planets.
Yeah, and I think it came about because M is the middle letter of the alphabet. So that's
It is something like that. Yes.
not too hot, not too cold.
Right.
Yeah, isn't that
Right in the middle.
wild?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fun. We'll have to revisit that topic. We're gonna have
Yes.
quite a few weeks where we're gonna have to come up with topics because there's no
That's
episode.
right.
So
Yeah, we could go on for this topic.
don't be
Actually.
surprised if you hear this one. Come back in part 2. All right. So we're gonna be talking about the Lower Decks episode Caves, but first, let's take a quick break to promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. But don't go away because we'll be right back. And if you're watching with us live, we're gonna continue on. So Veronica, did you want to bring us back with a spoiler alert?
Spoilers.
She's doing a cave echo.
There you go. Yeah.
I thought of that 2 seconds
Very-
ago. Yeah.
Very good.
Awesome.
job.
Awesome.
That was amazing.
All right, so that's spoilers for Star Trek Lower Decks,
Kudos.
the episode Caves, which I believe is the 8th episode of season 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm going to go ahead and jump out and say this is a wonderful episode.
Yes.
I loved this episode.
Yeah. It was
Amen.
almost like it was not recap when they like run at
Like a flashback episode.
it's like a flashback
Yes.
episode
Mhm.
where it would in the old days it would be flashing back to things you've already seen
Mhm.
and everyone's like, "Ugh." But this was really cool because you haven't seen it.
Right.
Yeah, all they needed was that goofy harp music that people would use for flashbacks sometimes. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Well, they did a similar sort of thing in season 1 in the courtroom episode.
Yeah.
When they're doing flashbacks to the little mini adventures that were part of that episode. But I mean, I love this the meta commentary, the fact that they're finally doing a cave episode and that there were
Yes.
so many cave episodes on
Yes.
Star Trek.
Yes.
Yes.
And they even made comments about the flat floor and the caves all look the same.
Right.
Yes.
Oh man, I kind of felt like it seemed like a season 1 episode where these 4 characters are establishing the bond between them. They're kind of getting used to each other and they're getting to know each other and they're becoming friends. And I kind of felt like, in the sense, not only that way, but like it focused solely on our 4 main characters, whereas over the seasons this has become much more of an ensemble show where every episode will have Dr. T or the captain and Ransom or Shax and all these extra characters that are all still have our 4 main characters at the center of the storyline, but all this whole ship is very much more populated now. You'll have a subplot that'll revolve around Billups, and this one, it boiled down to just the basic concept of these 4 characters and the relationship between them. And so it felt like a much simpler episode. It felt kind of throwback,
Yeah, but I like that though because
Mhm.
I mean they called out in the episode, but there hasn't been foursome really this whole season since they got
Yeah.
promoted.
Exactly.
And I love
Yeah.
that they're building on that. That they've and revealing they've been off leading missions with ensigns
Right.
and
Yeah.
doing things like that. But yeah, and then I was thinking about it watching the episode. Like, yeah, I mean, it has been two of them here, two of them there, one of them here, one of them there.
Yeah.
You haven't had the foursome like you used to have, which I thought it was a nice callback to that original setup of the show, but also kind of illustrating how the show has grown this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just jump in really quick with a couple of things because this comment is very, very important. Wayne says, I wait for Veronica's spoiler alerts with great anticipation.
So do we, Wayne.
So does she.
Right.
Yes.
And Matt says, the funniest thing in this episode was the idea that Rutherford got pregnant and hadn't told the others. Mariner's reactions were priceless.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with what Charles said. I thought this episode was brilliant. I laughed all the way through. And again, others who've done other things take note. There is a way to do satire, and there's a way to do callbacks. There's a way to do fan service and not go over it. They know how to do it perfectly. I lost it because this is something we've all wondered over the years. Okay, they have all this sophisticated technology, communicators, subspace radio, and they go into a freaking cave and they can't reach the ship. And she literally says, she says, a bunch of rocks always a bunch of rocks always blocks centuries of technological progress.
That's right.
It's like in modern movies now where we have to conspire a way for the person who's about to be killed to all of a sudden lose cell service.
Right.
And it's funny in Star Trek because they can communicate literally across thousands of light years. If they walk into a cave and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it can't reach the ship. Just like that.
Because there's a mineral in the in the rock.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Let me tell you what else this episode made me think of.
Okay.
And it kind of goes back to DS9, where DS9 you had big story arcs, especially toward the last half of the series. You had big story arcs, and there would be like a nice, quiet, fun episode before the big bang at the end of the season.
Right.
And I'm thinking specifically, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one where they're about to go to war. Everything's about to drop. And Jake and Nog go around looking for baseball cards and stuff. And it's such a sweet episode. And it kind of gives you that that little respite before you have the big thing that hits at the end of the season. And I'm wondering if we're going to have like a two-parter finale at this one, because we've got this plot that's been going throughout the entire season of whatever this ship is that's been, we thought, destroying ships from all these other races. And I wonder if we're going to get a big epic two-part finale. And this is that same sort of episode. This is the one that gives you, it takes you back to the beginning to remind you of what. I'm just wondering if there's big changes in store for our four characters, because they set this up like, don't you remember when they were all buddies and they all hung out together and they were all fun and sweet and told stories to each other?
Right.
Well, here's your last time seeing that.
Yeah. I saw a couple of comments today that was like, this did feel like the calm before the storm.
Right. Exactly.
And I noted watching this morning. I mean, this is such a small scale episode coming off of the one we had last week.
Yes.
That was like galactic in scale by the end of the episode.
Yes.
With Badgie. But then even cosmic in scale beyond that when he was evolved. And then this one is just our four characters in a cave. And then some other characters coming in and out. But I thought it was, like you said, really sweet, and I liked that it sort of reestablished the relationship between those characters and let us check in with where they are as a group right now.
Right.
And I mean, we may be in for a couple of big weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think that episode, I think it was in the cards.
In the cards, yes, yes. Thank you.
And that's the one that gives us the soulless minions of orthodoxy.
Right.
The greatest things ever. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's actually true. I read an article last night with Mike McMahon, who actually, I guess it was at New York Comic-Con. I meant to post this, and he was saying that he kind of sort of wanted to address what he said was kind of alarmist statement from a week or so ago.
Yeah.
And he said, well, look, basically when you do this in this business, I'm going to paraphrase. He's basically saying you're always paranoid when you're in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
He said, but I'm writing season 5 right now. And he kind of sort of thinks, he goes, it was kind of one of those, oh, but you just never know. And he's like, and I'm actually kind of sort of looking at season 6.
Yeah.
So he was trying to walk back because I think he caused a minor panic by what he said.
He got a phone call after that came on the internet.
The Paramount people were like, look, buddy,
why are your fans tweeting us?
Why you got everybody so riled up?
Right. Yes. But I also thought they, like you said, they did a really good job because on the other story, Cryon 4, here we go. I think it's one with Boimler. They're in the cave, and literally out of nowhere, what comes up? An ion storm. Of course, because of course it does.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you actually have a cave system where your communicators back up to the ship actually get through, well, you can't have that. So you got to move an ion storm in to just knock that completely out.
I want to get into some of these because I love that Boimler story.
Yes.
For one, I love that they brought back what's his face, Levy, the conspiracy theory guy.
Yeah.
And that's something that they were doing last week too, as we talked about, that they're building up on a lot of their own continuity now.
Exactly.
And I love that this episode did a lot of that also, but I love that it was the Vendorians, and I love that the Queen Vendorian or leader.
Yeah,
it was Captain What's Her Face. I just blanked. It was the captain. It was her voice.
Oh, is it really?
It sounded. It had to be. It sounded exactly like her.
I didn't catch
exactly
it.
like her.
And I that made me laugh because it's an animated series, Alien, and they're reusing a member of the voice cast, and that
just like on the animated series,
a better tribute to the animated series than anything we've seen recently.
That's exactly what I was going to say after I finished this episode, and I thought, because to me the aliens looked a little bit like the Phylosians, and I was just thinking this is a much better tribute to the anniversary of animated series than anything that we got from those stupid short tracks. Very short tracks.
Yes.
Not short enough.
Not short enough.
So not short enough tracks.
Right.
The Boimler thing was great.
Yeah, I love the whole little adventure. I love that Levy was accidentally right about the Vendorians, and they were just fascinated that,
and you knew that was going to happen.
All of his wildly wrong. He's on the subspace forums.
Yes.
And then he's like having a conversation with them, but arguing with them about, they're like, no, we absolutely didn't do this. And he's like, agree to disagree.
Right.
Like,
it's exactly one of those internet conspiracy guys.
Yeah. And what I love, and I got to do this, is they're dragging Boimler away. He said, I thought you were just a paranoid anxiety made up by people who needed an imagined enemy to simulate order in unrealistic disaster so it doesn't feel so random and chaotic. And the guy goes, that's what we wanted you to think.
Exactly.
I love that
that was a great line
of faking the warp drive damaging the fabric of the galaxy, and they're like, that wasn't us.
Okay. A couple of comments, because one of them picks up on that point. Wayne says, wondering if this is a trend with possible resolution or evolution as to why Mariner is constantly a grouch.
Maybe.
Because she's been through so much?
So many caves. And Matt says, I love the reference to warp drive damaging subspace. I thought they had sort of forgotten about that.
Yeah.
These people don't forget anything.
No, they do not.
No.
It was a really unfortunate plot device that everybody who wrote it wanted to forget as soon as they did it. So
they made a few little references to it, I think, and then I think the official explanation is they made a modification to the engines, so it doesn't matter anymore, because at some point someone was like, well, we can't just do warp 6 and all the Star Trek shows forever.
Yeah. And the thing is, the first warp modification to get around that was the stupid move. Well, not stupid, but the moving nacelles in Voyager. That was the whole point. The position allowed them to go at warp 9. And then they're like, well, we can't have every ship with the warp nacelles moving up and down. So they quietly got rid of that warp limit. So I love that they brought it back.
Yeah. And I love that it's potentially a Vendorian trick anyway. I love that the Vendorians are just going around giving moral tests to people.
That was great.
Yeah, I love that.
That's more about the Vendorians than we've ever learned.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love the whole thing where it's like, well, you're not as bad as we thought. Except, you actually still lay eggs in people's throats, wherever that brood pouch was. Like, well, we actually do that.
Was that a reference to the Gorn? Because that made me think of the new Gorn. They lay eggs in people.
It
could have been.
I didn't think about that.
Oh man. Well, we've got like 10 minutes left. We're 10, 15
Oh my
minutes left.
gosh.
So let's talk about Rutherford having a baby.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that
was that
was
alien? That was that
amazing.
alien Star Trek before?
Uh-uh.
Okay, cool.
No, but there was a different alien that made Trip have a baby.
Yes,
I
I
was
remember that.
just going to say that. Yeah.
I thought there was, but I was like, I don't remember that being in like current, like.
No.
Yeah.
But I love that just as a Starfleet officer, it's like, yeah, I had a baby in a cave one time. I didn't tell you guys about that. And they're like,
What?
no.
What?
Even Boimler was like, I have a roommate you didn't tell me.
Right.
I didn't hear you making your log or anything.
That kind of things happens on away missions.
Yeah.
Well, and it's another Star Trek trope because there's the famous there's been a couple of famous episodes. There was one in Voyager where this alien despot took over Kess's body, and then there's a really bad episode of DS9 with this dude named Rayo Vantica kept transferring himself by touching people. It's where Dr. Bashir does this horrible acting. So this whole kind of transferring yourself to people is another trope that they kind of picked up on the Star Trek.
Right.
I just loved.
I really liked in that one though the development for Tiana.
Yes.
That her not liking. The only thing she likes less than engineers are babies, but she's kind of bonds with this baby over the course of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
The course of the story.
Mhm.
I guess it was like, I don't know, 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I felt like this is a very different episode for Ta'ana
Mm.
because she
Mhm.
wasn't her, off the collar kind of character like she is, where she's just cussing left and right, and
Right.
she's much more measured in this one. She's much more calm and doing the job, but without, I don't know. I just felt like it was a different approach, and I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
She wasn't the
Yeah.
comic relief, in other words,
Right.
Right.
which
Yeah,
we've
and
gotten a lot of with her, like, chasing when the Borg come on the ship and she chases the laser pointer,
Right.
Right.
just stupid crap like that is hilarious. And we didn't get any of that kind of Ta'ana in this one, which I loved. I really enjoyed.
I like the matter of fact way in which she just nonchalantly said, "These gals procreate by dermal contact," and it was just so whatever. Hey, it is
Just
what it is.
A medical
Yeah.
fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked Rutherford using his engineering skills to make the tricorder to be a translator,
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
so he could talk.
Oh,
to the
that was
creature.
great.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really good.
This episode did another one of those things that's also funny if you do it right, which is where the aliens are horribly seeming and they speak in these big expansive phrases, and then when you talk to them all of a sudden they're like, yeah, hey, whatever, dude, and all of a sudden, because like that creature, it was roaring, and then it was like, oh, I wouldn't try to eat you, I just want to protect my kid. And it was it was just also something else they did throughout the episodes I thought was cool is, every person's experience allowed them to contribute a little bit to the technology they needed to get out of the current situation.
Right.
Yes.
And they even did amazing techno babble with that one mineral that it had a name. And then there was another version where they literally slapped tri in front of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Right.
So it's like cobalt. Well, there's tri cobalt. There's this, there's tri this. It was great.
Do you know what? There's another theme here that I didn't really notice at the time. And it's only as we're discussing this that I'm kind of picking up on it. And that is that almost every one of the stories that they're telling has something to do with them making contact with and forming a relationship with something that is an other. So it's like Rutherford doing the translator to talk to the monster, and the way that the lady impregnates Rutherford and he's like freaking out about it, but then he forms a bond with the baby, and even Ta'ana does that as well, and it's then forming an impression on the shape changing mold or moss or whatever it is, which then turns out to be the Vendosians, and they are, the whole thing has been a morality test, and they make a bond with them as well. So they're bonding with each other in a new way, but they're also forming bonds with the people and the aliens around them.
And
even interesting,
and even characters that we've seen before, like Levy and Delta Shift, that have not been likable characters.
Others.
They're. I really enjoyed the Mariner and Delta Shift thing where she's now
Me too.
lieutenant and she's leading the mission.
Yeah.
But then she has to sort of reach common ground. And I love that the weird little thing where they grow older as they walk towards the one wall.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Mhm.
And then they introduce like, hey, look up here.
Right.
No, and they even threw chronotons in there. I mean,
Yeah.
they were really hitting it today.
Yeah.
You're right. That was great with the whole thing. Yeah, I like what you said because they even talked about it was like caves always foster understanding and openness and sharing and all. It's almost like the ultimate getaway from a company when they make you go on a picnic or something to try to bond. It's like the caves do this for everybody.
Right.
It's a team building challenge.
Yes.
I just wonder, what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, because
No.
if they're doing this much to build bridges between all these disparate characters, is there going to be like a big shipwide separation to next week or something like that? I'm really interested in how these bonds are going to carry on through the storytelling and the rest of the season.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Allie, I'm sorry, Charles, you were talking about the one with Mariner. One of the things I thought was here again, callbacks. When the guy says the shuttle salvageable, the power's Dunzel.
I heard him. I heard he say the power's Dunzel.
From
I
the Ultimate Universe.
didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said the
I've heard
power's
Dunzo,
Dunzel.
but
Yes, Dunzel.
It's a part that serves no useful purpose, which is what the Commodore called Kirk in the Ultimate Computer when he was going to be replaced by M5.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I
that was
totally
another.
missed that line. That's so funny.
And the
Oh.
mineral that they needed, they pronounced it completely differently, but they kept calling it pergium. It's pergium,
Yep.
the mineral that they were mining in The Devil in the Dark from the original series
Oh,
of
yeah.
Laporta.
Yep.
So-
Which is in caves.
Yes.
Everything is in caves.
And that
Yes.
creature in the Rutherford storyline was very Horta-ish.
Yeah.
Not in look necessarily, but it's protecting its
Mhm.
baby. It's not trying to be a monster.
Right.
Was the whole thing for the Horta.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that's very smart.
Yeah.
Elaine says she feels bad for that one guy that lost his leg. Did he get his leg back? Did he?
No.
Did
no,
Anna?
they have to go,
No, but
regrow
did
his
she
leg.
regrow it?
Oh, I
I'm
hope
assuming
so.
I want to know. Is he just hobbling around, or did he get a new leg?
I'm sure
Well,
he
they-
did.
I'm sure he got a
I'm
leg.
not
Nog got
sure
a new
so.
leg.
They said they couldn't risk going back, so they said, "Look, we'll just get we'll get the doctor to get you a new one." And at the end, he was like, "Can I get my leg back?" And they were like, "No." So
We're done being old. We're not going back for your leg.
Right. I love when Mariner and the other woman just turn into like bickering old ladies as they're walking along.
yeah. And she goes,
that was
"Oh,
good.
my hip." Yeah, that was great. And then I love, the one guy who broke his leg. They're basically like, he's a prodigy, he's young, so he can afford a few years. And
Right.
that was the whole thing.
Yeah. And then I loved in the Tendi storyline that it goes back to the first episode.
Yeah.
It takes place right
Mhm.
after, basically when they first met and became friends,
Yes.
Mhm.
which I thought was really nice.
Yeah.
That's why I'm telling you, man. This whole thing is a huge throwback, and they're preparing us for
Yeah.
something next week.
We got a big couple of weeks coming, I think.
Yeah, we do, man.
Yeah.
I'm so looking. Oh, wait. We got a Golden Girls meets Lower Decks.
Right.
I don't know if Elaine knows how much I love Golden Girls, but you're just singing my song right now, Elaine.
Right. So any speculation about what we're going to come up against in the next couple of weeks? I mean, we've got this big storyline that they didn't touch on at all. We better
Right.
see Talin in the next 2 weeks because I haven't seen Talin in a while.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm sure she's going to be in the last 2, and we know that she's going to be in season 5, according to what Mike
Yeah.
McMahon said. So, yeah, I'm sure she'll be there in the last 2-parter.
Because I love
I'm already assuming it's a 2-parter.
right. And then I mean they've got the dangling storyline. I think it was from all the way back to last season where Boimler was like
Yeah.
listed in Section 31, or
Yeah.
transporter duplicate Boimler,
Right.
which they've not revisited yet. So that's still
Yeah.
out there.
Completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have that dangling storyline of Rutherford and his implant. Like
Yes.
the origins of that.
Yes.
So I mean, either of those could come back in the next 2 weeks, or those could be season 5 storylines. We don't know.
That's right.
Mhm.
I thought
Um,
they finalized his implant in an
No, we learned some about it in that episode
Mhm.
last year, but they haven't gone back to that yet.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, one of the things I did love about tonight's episode, we keep talking about they were doing the callbacks, is they even inserted technobabble that literally made no sense. But like Voyager especially got accused of that. It's sometimes what you hear so many times in Star Trek, they will say, "If I can just." And that all that weird stuff was like, Boimler, take off your pants. The material of the fiber hit by a phaser beam will do what?
I love he said he could have used my jacket.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love when he takes his pants off. She's like, "You just did that right away," and he's like, "He's my roommate."
Right, exactly. That reminds me of another thing that I thought was funny was at the end when they're in Tindy's story and they're stuck in the turbo lift, and Tindy was like, "Oh, this has been such a fun day. This is the best day ever." And Mariner says, "Well, did you enjoy peeing in the corner?"
Yeah.
The turbo lift is round. There is no corner.
Surely there's a hatch or something.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, I love this one. This maybe is one of, if not my favorite episode of the season so far. Now, this is not the first time I've said that this year, because it's been a super strong year.
It has been such a good year. Yeah.
Lower Decks is always. This is such a good year.
Well,
I mean, I feel like we do have this same conversation every season
because it's better every year.
It is.
Yeah.
And it was a great step to let them be promoted, and you can build more on the characters that way.
Yep.
But I love that they're to the point now that they're using their own continuity.
Yes.
And it's things from Lower Decks coming back that we remember. And I hope they continue doing that into season 5, because I think that is really effective.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Right. Yeah.
Can you believe what is it, season 4? We're not even we're at like 37 episodes of this show so far.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That's
That's
like almost a whole season.
That's like a season and a half of DS9.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy how few episodes there have been, but they've built the show up so much. So
Not only that, but they're like half the length. So really, this is like
they're
not
half
even
the
a
length,
season.
but 3 times the pace. So
Yes.
I'm not sure how the math works out.
That's true.
There's some of the
I
most
feel like they're in ADHD time.
Yeah. There's some of the most story-dense stuff I've ever seen, because we say every week, like, they're under 30 minutes, and I took a full journey with these people today. A complete, satisfying story. Amazing they can do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
So I'm looking forward to next week. So but next week, we're going to do something a little bit different. Because next week, we're going to have a Halloween special instead of talking about Lower Decks. And so we're going to be talking about some of the horror and Halloween movies that have starred Star Trek alumni. So everyone's got some homework this week to find some episodes to mention.
Right.
But we're going to be talking about some of our favorite horror and Halloween movies that feature Star Trek alumni. And then the following week, we'll be doing the final 2 episodes of Lower Decks. So no separate topic that week.
Since it is a 2-parter.
Right.
Yeah.
We already know this.
Right.
We're just going to assume.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then the week after that, we're going to celebrate our belated 140th episode, which is actually technically next week, but you got to squeeze some things in.
So Wayne and I've been talking about some of this offline, and so for the rest of you listening, start thinking about everything from Blackula to Kingdom of the Spiders to Twilight Zone to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and everything in between.
Right. What you need to do to start with is just pull up Jeffrey Combs' IMDb.
Oh, dude.
All the stuff he's done.
Yeah.
I already have one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's save some for next week.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. All right. So, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Well, go listen to Modern Musicology, my other podcast. It's a music podcast, as the name implies, and we are coming up on our 100th episode.
Wow.
And I'm very excited about that. We plan to do a whole show of listener questions. I haven't actually pitched out to get people to submit questions yet. I'm going to be doing that very, very soon. So if anybody listening is a Modern Musicology listener, I know Elaine is, come up with questions that you want to pitch to our 4 co-hosts, and we're gonna be doing that on our 100th episode. Awesome. And then, of course, you can look for Doctor Who A to Z, and you can look for cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on X and in Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups, and then one day maybe a book, but more on that later, much later.
Right.
And how about you? How about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
Yep. And where else?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Do you have a closing for us this week?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
we had so many great quotes in this episode.
I know.
You're trying now.
You didn't remind me.
I did. Watching the episode earlier.
At 5 a.m.?
No.
Okay.
After work.
Okay. I don't remember you being like, look at that. Sorry.
All right. So I'm going to say I hate cave missions.
There you
We'll
go.
close it out with that. So tune in next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll on YouTube and on Facebook. We'll be having our Halloween special. And if you miss it, you can catch up the replay on YouTube or listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and have a great night.
Thanks.
See y'all.
See ya.